everybody. My name is Ryan,
And my name is Andrew.
and we are the Pod Piece. Welcome back. Once again, we are in person, not live. Going to be giving you today our reaction on the first two episodes of One Piece live action. We just watched them, and so giving you kind of our first impressions here. Andrew, what were you thinking after first couple episodes?
Um, Better than expected. Still not fantastic. Um,
I'm with you.
yeah, that
Expectations were kind of like we were ready for something bad, but hey, if it was good, that's cool too. Meeting somewhere in the middle. It definitely wasn't like well put together, but hey, there's not a lot of reason to hate it. If you're a One Piece super fan, you probably might not like it because it's, the story, the whole story, and nothing like the story. Like everything's basically different, but in and of itself, hey, I didn't think it was too bad. How did you like the main cast there? Luffy, Zoro, and Nami. Did they work for you?
I think Nami and I think Nami worked. I think I don't know. The actor who played Zoro did good for like the action scenes. I just don't know that I'm like fully with him as Zoro in the non-action scenes, like the dialogue heavy portions. Just because I don't think he carries himself like Zoro does. He doesn't seem very like mysterious and
Mm.
I don't know, the intimidating maybe. He's not either of those things, um, in my opinion. But and Luffy, I think I don't know if it's like trying too hard to be Luffy, but it comes off as like goofy Luffy or more goofy than Luffy already is. Um, but feel
I
free to elaborate there.
I see that in kind of every way. I'm not personally. I wasn't like the biggest fan of Nami because I was afraid that Nami was going to be a little bit like, well, it's the person that plays the girl, and so it's the character is just being the pretty girl, and I was afraid that it was going to be that, and it kind of just felt like that. Like Nami
Well, I don't
as
think they didn't do much justice for her character compared to I think how she was introduced in the actual anime. Like I think they just kind of like threw her in there to be like, okay, let's get this ball rolling, more than let's make you wonder. I guess like there isn't much like in the anime. There's a lot left to interpretation. And I don't think that that's really shown here so far.
yeah, it was. It definitely wasn't. It felt like she was thought of as a challenge, other than rather than an opportunity. Like how are we going to tell Nami and Zoro's story here in the first couple episodes? Just throw her in there, and then we'll figure it out. And then they never
Yeah.
really figured it out. And it felt like, yeah, that's the archetype that Nami is, like the kind of sassy boss girl. But then they just kind of wrote a sassy boss girl and didn't write Nami. Like Nami's not supposed to be like the action star. And at least in the first couple episodes, she's looks honestly kind of just as effective in a fight as Luffy does. And I don't think that's
Hmm.
how we should be thinking about it. Um, and yeah, as far as the other characters, think I agree too because I thought the choreography, honestly, in these first couple episodes of fights were kind of awesome. I think that they were
Hmm.
way better than I was expecting, and so that's great. The only thing is like, obviously, when you do those, you know the conclusion before you actually do the choreography. You know that Zoro's going to chop this guy in half. So it felt to me like when we see that fight in episode one, it was just kind of like guys fighting, and then it was like, okay, that's done. Now he chops him in half. Like their little dance they were
Yeah.
doing. Now it's over. Now he can just chop him in half. Like it didn't build up to that. It was just kind of guy then presents his torso to be cleanly chopped in half.
Yeah.
So there were moments like that. That was just kind of the most glaring one to me. And so, yeah, you're right. Zoro, he works in the fights, but he doesn't carry the presence. And I guess we alluded to this yesterday in the live stream. Like the voice actor for Zoro in both English and Japanese, actually, a lot of presence there. He's a very commanding, very authoritative guy, or at least voice, and carries that presence. He's got these big, the character's got these big, broad shoulders. He's an imposing person. That's not this actor. Actor's got very slunched posture. He's got a very diminutive voice. He's quiet and has a deep voice, so that kind of comes off as imposing. But then when he actually has to speak up, you realize he's kind of got an effeminate speech pattern. Like he doesn't have that presence, and you can't. That's just a human thing. That's not something that, unless you're an amazing actor, that's not something that you can just put on. You either have it or you don't. And I felt that same thing for Shanks, actually. Like he didn't have the presence that these characters need. Like they are bigger than life kind of figures, especially Shanks. And so when they just kind of are guys, it takes away that specialness. Luffy also, I felt the opposite, honestly. So I hear what you're saying, and I do agree with it in that he was goofier, and the goofiness felt like it wasn't who he is. He was just trying to be silly. Whereas in the anime and the manga, it's just like, no, this guy's he's just a fucking idiot. Like, sorry, he's just a silly dummy. Whereas in the anime, it was kind of like, well, he's making a joke right now. He's joking around all the time. Whereas Luffy, that's just who he is. He's not joking. He's just that kind of idiot. So that's the kind of difference there. But then also, this Luffy, kind of in that line, was a lot more serious in that he's actually formulating plans. He's not like anime Luffy's got like an ant brain. He just kind of goes. Whereas this Luffy, he's game planning things to a much higher degree than canon Luffy. And is that bad? I don't know. It's just a pretty big change in character. So, and then actually we forgot about the fourth biggest character in live action, Kobe, obviously, like the real star of the show. So you loved Kobe, right? You had to love Kobe. Kobe's in it more than anybody.
I did. I loved Kobe. I loved the back and forth. I don't like how they're doing that, where there's constant breaks in the story. Like I understand, like you're going to different areas to continue the story of characters that you've introduced, but that's like an afterthought or like a artifact of them introducing too many characters at once. So it's like I don't think it's even, if they wrote it, to introduce them, as, I don't know. It seems like we're jumping cuts back and forth, and it's like not staggering, but disorienting in like, where are we? I mean, it'll give you the caption to like, we're here, but it's like,
right.
But why in this portion of the show are we going here? Like it doesn't really like line up.
I really, so we know the story, obviously. We're Pod Piece, the One Piece catch up podcast. We know what's going on, especially when they just make up new storylines. But my curiosity is what's going on in the heads of someone who doesn't know the story? Because like you're saying, we're jumping around not just place to place all the time. We're jumping around like this happened 20 years ago. Okay, this is present day. This happened 10 years ago. Okay, this is present day. This happened 10 years ago. Wait, what? We're jumping around so much that even for you who pretty darn familiar with the story, it's like, where even are we right now? What's going on? And it doesn't.
Yeah, well, it's not even it's time and location jumping. So it's not even just like we're jumping, to a different time. It's a different time and a location, like multiple times.
Because this story's got nothing to do with what's going on here. It's got nothing to do with what's going on here. But they feel like they need to tell that story. And how are we going to do that? Well, we'll chop up this half and just shove it in here. We'll chop in this half and just shove it in here. It's pretty haphazard.
it doesn't flush well. It's not like a cohesive kind of story when you're doing that. Like I
Yeah.
think I would have preferred if they did the flashback scenes as one scene. Like in terms of at least the Luffy flashback. Like have that like, a 15-minute or whatever period of just getting that out of the way. Like setting up him instead of having to cut
That's what
every
we were suggesting in
20
the
minutes.
live stream yesterday. Is like, I don't know why we need to have that flashback. That's kind of an invention of the anime. It's like, just tell the story. We have the beginning with the prologue of Gold Roger's execution. Okay, then a few years later, Shanks and Luffy. Then our story starts. Like, this is building up the motivation to that, is building up the motivation to that. That's all a continuation of one story. But when we chop it up so much, these stories that do kind of blend together become alien to one another and stop all momentum in the one that we're supposed to care about the most, which is what's happening right now. So, especially like Buggy's story, where we get like a pretty big flashback of Romance Dawn with Luffy and Shanks, is like there's quite a bit of momentum there. All gets killed, and then when we come back, it feels like all movement's dead. It feels like we've been here for 50 years. It makes this one episode feel like 2 hours long, as opposed to just a still pretty big episode of 1 hour long. And obviously that happens everywhere. When we get these flashbacks, you're killing the momentum and the storytelling of what you're actually doing to poorly tell this other tangent that doesn't really have anything to do with what we're doing right now. So I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of that either.
Well, and it's not even, I mean, it's that, but along with like, I feel like when they're doing these flashbacks, they don't, like you mentioned, like they don't really tie into even the scene prior where it's like, our characters in present day are doing this. Let's throw a flashback in there. And it's like,
Yeah.
why? There's no like
Sometimes
connection to it.
the only, like, occasionally we'll get some things like at the end of episode 2, Luffy's drowning in this shot, so we go to him drowning in the flashback, and it's like, okay, that's kind of a visual reference to one another, so that can segue. But that's like honestly one of the best transitions we get, and it's kind of a forced one. It's one that they thought of when they were whiteboarding all this. That is an alien situation to the story they're adapting, which we can get into. Like I said, it's the whole story, or it's the story, the whole story, nothing like the story. Yeah, okay, we went to Shell's Town, we went to Orange Town, but the stories were completely different. Like, totally new things going on here. Orange Town is apparently all just a big top circus now, and it's all one room or 2 rooms. That entire hour-long episode is basically just in 2 rooms. Like, I didn't even hate any of it, to be honest with you. For the almost none of it I hated, but it's not what I signed up for. This isn't One Piece. It's similar. It rhymes. It reminds me of One Piece, but this ain't the story, dude. I don't know what we're doing anymore. Especially, like I said, when we hang out so much with our new main character, Kobe. It's like, this dude was a minor character. Even in the grand scheme of One Piece, Kobe is a very minor character. Why are we spending, to this point through 2 episodes, half of the runtime not just focusing, not just like having him in the scene, but focusing on his storyline that left the main storyline in episode 1? Why are we spending so much time on something that does not matter and inventing
Do you know?
storylines that do not matter? Go ahead.
Do you know like the legitimate statistic for like screen time, like percentage wise?
No, it's not half. It just feels like
Yeah.
half because when we take away from the main story, you better have a good freaking reason. And if that good reason is to show that Kobe gets interrogated by Garp, and Garp kind of stares at him like he's about to begin the grooming of all groomings, that's not a good reason. It's just, it leaves you feeling like your time just got wasted by something that doesn't matter. And again, we have,
Well, I mean, it depends on
perspective
what they're
of-
trying to.
the perspective
Sorry.
of fans that know what the story should be. So any change is going to be like, why do they do that? I'm trying to get beyond that. I'm trying to like what would anybody be thinking here? I think anybody would be thinking, who the fuck is that? What's going on? Why does he already calling Kobe's bullshit? Why is he staring at him like he wants to touch his buns? What's going on? But anyway, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
What was I gonna say? I was gonna say it depends on like what they're trying to pay off with the character. Like if they're trying to do something that they haven't done in the anime, then sure, I guess. But so far, it doesn't feel like that.
No, not at all. I'm so we've talked about some good and bad here, right? Like I do think that our last episode we definitely emphasized the bad more than the good, and not for like no reason, but it seems like some stuff has changed, like small stuff has changed since the trailer. I think that the colors genuinely have changed in since
They
the
look
trailer.
brighter
A
or
lot
warmer.
a lot less saturated or a lot less flattened. You know, like the color correction in the trailers was so in the red that it made Shelltown look like it was in the desert. Here it's like, okay, no, I can actually see saturated but halfway realistic colors here that emphasize what One Piece should be, which is really colorful. It's like that's good. I like that. That made the scene where we see Buggy's new super secret amazing power of morphine gas. That made that really fun because bright red, colorful gas, like that was cool. That visually that was cool. So that was a good change. And overall, not bad, man. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I think average people that like kind of Big Bang Theory fan, the guy that just turns on the TV and jerks off, like, yeah, we're good. We're good. This is fine for that.
Yeah, I think for a regular, like, honestly, I think this is more catered toward, like, not even like an audience that's watched One Piece, but one that is just a casual Netflix subscriber. Like, it's like, oh, what's new, And then they see it, and they're like, that was good. But I think if they knew what it was based on, they would be like, oh, it's okay at best.
And the funny thing is, I genuinely think that almost all that fan base who does know what the story is supposed to be isn't going to care because they're, like we kind of mentioned yesterday, they're just happy that this thing exists. So almost no matter what it looks like, they're cool with. We saw in the trailers we were looking at, like all the fans were just freaking out, happy about like, oh, look at this, look at that, and stuff that we thought looked awful. Fans were like celebrating. So these, in general, the One Piece audience isn't looking at this stuff like it's Citizen Kane, and you shouldn't be. That's wrong to look at it that way. But there's a difference between Citizen Kane and a well-told story. Like it is kind of a mess. And if you care about the actual story that's not a mess, it is kind of like, well, why didn't you just do it right? And we did kind of express concern about like the what would you call it? Diversity hires, I guess, in the casting. We kind of expressed concerns about that yesterday. And yeah, no, clearly that's all over the place, but it not too distractingly so, just to the point where it's like, oh, that's supposed to be him? Oh, I would. All right. I'm glad you told me that. I wouldn't have guessed that. But yeah, overall, man, could have
Well,
been a
even
lot worse.
yeah, like even the young Luffy, I don't think they even sound similar. Like
No,
accent wise,
Luffy and
even.
young Luffy really didn't bear a passing resemblance to each other. But I guess both. That's kind of the tough thing about Brazil, like being that massive nation. Both can be both people can be Brazilian of Brazilian descent and be kind of in not even similar. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. You can even in Brazil, you can both be Brazilian and be of like a different ethnicity. It's that big a country. And that's kind of what you have with Luffy and young Luffy, which is why you can tell because of the way they filmed it. It's like, oh, this is obviously Luffy. If you know the story, it's like, oh, this is obviously Luffy. But genuinely, they don't look like each other really at all. And they don't sound like each other really at all. So, but I don't know. I give passing grades. I'm happy enough with it. Through 2 episodes. We'll see. We read the synopses. It sounds like shit gets off the rails here quick. But through 2 episodes, hey, why not? I'm fine with it.
What would you rate them? Like just the two on like based on a scale of just each other.
Out of 10?
I think yeah.
Give them a solid 6, man. Like they're fine.
Well, hold on. Both a 6 or first one better than the second one? I honestly thought the first one was better.
Yeah, I think the first one is better, but that's just because the main issue with the second episode is it drags on so long. It basically all takes place in the dark, which feels kind of cheap. And also, here's one thing that actually genuinely really bugged me. Shanks losing his arm in the live action is kind of a totally different circumstance. It kind of kills his character a little bit because he's no longer like diving to save Luffy in this emergency moment and he loses his arm and at the act of saving Luffy's life, it's like he straight up basically loses a fight with the sea monster. So, yeah, a lot of moments in episode 2 that kind of were like, why are we doing this? That's not how that should be. That kind of kills that. A lot of moments that visually weren't so hot. And yeah, the circus. I don't like the idea of completely replacing Orangetown with a poor man's Joaquin Phoenix. Like,
well, hold on. We did get a glimpse outside when Nami went outside and they brought her back in.
That's the thing. They spent so much money on that set and spent probably 10 seconds there. Like, we got the ruined Shell Town. Let's spend some time there. There's actually some story that's supposed to happen there. No, we do not get that at all. We get some dude straight up tackling Nami, and that's it. So
yeah, I would say I like the first one better. If I had to give it like a number, I would give the first one like a 7. Second one like a 6.5.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, hey, have I seen better TV? Yeah, I've seen a lot better TV. Have I seen worse TV? Oh yeah, no question about that. Even in this genre of pop serial anime adaptations, is like, dude, we can get a lot worse real quick. So hey, I'm ready for the next 6 episodes. I hope it does good. At this point, I'm hoping for a second season, but again, that can change pretty quick. Shit gets kind of wild from the synopses we read. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Do you have anything else you want to share, Andrew?
No, I mean, like you said, you know, I wouldn't mind a second season if it keeps its pace in terms of like staying somewhat grounded. And you know, at this point, I've kind of given up on it staying with the story, just like you said about what we read with the synopsis. So
Yeah,
I'm just, you know, we're gonna see how it turns out. And then I think I mentioned yesterday, the actors, you know, if they do a second season, they've had time in the shoes of these characters. So I, you know, hope that they would, you know, get better or more comfortable with even, you know, the role. So I don't think it would be a bad thing to have a second season in that regard.
I totally agree. Like, there's a lot of room for growth in that. I mean, and that's from everybody. I mean, the actor for Zoro just has to learn to convey the power of the role. The actor for Luffy's, honestly, that's an impossible mission. I don't think that's any actor could really realistically be doing better than what the guy in Godoy is doing. But living into that role better will just come with time. And Nami feeling like not just generic sassy girl boss. Like, these are things that will hopefully come the more they are in the roles. So yeah, thumbs up so far. Well, we'll see where we are tomorrow when we come back with episodes 3 and 4. Okay, guys, that's been it from us today. We'll see you next time on the Pod Piece.